Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us in this new webinar. This time to talk about the current crisis in the Taiwan Strait with Admiral Hsi-Min. He was the chief of the General Staff of the Taiwanese Armed Forces between the 2017 and 2019. He was a Vice Minister of National Defense and former Commander of the Navy. Good night, Admiral. Thanks for talk with Athena Lab. It's an honor for us from this side of the Pacific.
Good morning, all of my friends. Thanks very much for the National invite me to speak here. It's the first time I have a conversation with friends in South America. It's quite experienced for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Admiral, in your opinion, what is the difference between the current crisis in the Taiwan Strait and the previous crisis in the late 90s?
Yeah, I would say that's now previously people usually say that we have 3 times the Taiwan Strait crisis, and the people regards the recent event as a kind of fourth crisis. For the first crisis and the second crisis, this was happened in 1954 and in 1958. There were kind of a gunfire crisis. Principally, this were aftermath of Chinese Civil War between the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese Nationalist Party. Now we usually name it KMT. KMT is still a big party in Taiwan, although it's not a ruling party anymore, but it's still biggest the opposition party. But for the CCP, you know, that's the only one party in China. So both parties have a kind of a civil war, and the KMT withdrew to Taiwan. And after withdrew to Taiwan in 1949, and the following of the serious incident that during the 1954 and 58, there's very still gunfire. So the people call it the first and the second, the Taiwan Strait crisis. But for the third crisis, this was during the 1995 to 1996. 1996 missile crisis was the CCP. China wants to put some pressure on the former President Li Denghui, who supported Taiwan's independence movement. That is the CCP crime. So they want to to keep Li Denghui from being elected during the 1996 general election. This was a kind of a missile crisis. However, at that time, the missile from China is not so accurate. After the United States dispatched the 2 aircraft carrier battle groups intervened, so its crisis was finished quite soon. However, for the recent crisis, so everybody knows the background. That's because of the United States, the Speaker's Pelosi's visits. In my opinion, such kind of overreaction from China, that is a kind of a reaction to anger at the United States. So Speaker Pelosi's visits, in my opinion, should be only regarded kind of the excuse. So if even there was no Pelosi's visit, I believe China will still find another excuse to coerce Taiwan. I believe they conducted this kind of military exercise. There are several purposes. The first, they just want to tell the United States, one China principle is China's red line. You should never cross this line, and there's no room to compromise for China. And secondly, I believe China just trying to tell Taiwan and the United States, I can do whatever I want on Taiwan, and the United States is not able to interfere with that. And the third, that China wants to create the kind of new normal or new status quo. So the midline is broken. Midline is the kind of line between the mainland China and Taiwan. This is kind of unspoken consensus, that creates prevent any kind of conflicts. But I'm worried about if now the median line is broken, then in the future probably there will kind of a free conflict easily to be happen. We have to be very cautious about it. This is kind of difference with the
Thanks, Admiral. I cannot imagine a more challenging task than protecting Taiwan. Could you explain us what is the overall defense concept that you developed as a chief of staff of the Taiwanese armed forces?
Yes, in principle, before the last 2 decades, although China enjoys the quantity, but Taiwan still enjoy the quality with our weapon system. However, for the past 2 decades, China's modernization of the military rapid, very fast. So we can no longer compete with them with either quantitative or qualitative. So we need to change. We need to change. So overall defense concept is under this kind of difficult situation developed when I was a chief of the general staff. In principle, this overall defense concept was developed based on the deterrence by denial, this series, and executed by the asymmetrical warfare. That because now Taiwan is facing the challenge of the national defense, that's including this kind of gray zone coercion almost happening every day on the airspace and the water surrounding Taiwan. And secondly, probably they will launch a different kind of invasion, including the seizure of the outlying islands, or blockade operations, or joint strike on the main islands, even the full-scale invasion to occupy it completely. Yeah. And the third, the disparity of the defense resource across the straits. We have to consider that during the 1996 crisis, China's defense expenditure is kind of a twice of that Taiwan. But now this time, the crisis, China's national defense, the expenditure is already 22 times of that of Taiwan. So that's quite different. And the fourth, we don't have too much time to prepare for ourselves. According to the former commander of Indo-PACOM of the United States, he said by 2027, China will have a full capability to invent and take over Taiwan. So there's only kind of only 5 years for us to be well prepared. And finally, we also have a very serious situation. We are quite different for the ideology. Even some people have a different idea about our national identity. So it's in fact serious for our unity. That is why I want to develop this kind of a overall defense concept. That is the concept we can use the asymmetrical warfare to deter and even defend ourselves from the huge enemy. But however, overall defense concept is quite complicated. Actually, I just finished my book, will be published on the 1st of September. It's a kind of a 500 pages books, so it's quite complicated. That's including everything from the theory to the practice, and from the principal guidance until the capabilities build up and the concept of operations, even the describing about territorial defense forces, this kind of a civilian defense. That's really complicated. I just cannot tell you in a short time, but I will be willing to answer your specific question about overall defense concept. I stopped here.
What lessons do you take from the current war in Ukraine for the Taiwanese defense?
Well, Ukraine war give Taiwan's a very good lesson learned. For instance, when 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when I just retired, I wrote an op-ed, an article on the newspaper to urge that Taiwan should establish kind of a territorial defense forces, because it represents kind of a determination and a willingness to defend ourselves. And I was criticized a lot. The people criticized me, saying that I just want to send civilians, people to death, to die. People didn't listen to me. But after the Ukraine war, the Taiwanese people found out the war will really happen in Taiwan, probably because the people has no sense of crisis and no sense of urgency in Taiwan. But now we just couldn't believe that the Putin would really do so. That is also shocked the Taiwanese people. So during after the Ukraine war, I co-authored with the United States professor Michael Hunsaker to urge again that it is a time for Taiwan to have a lesson learned from the Ukraine war and establish the territorial defense forces. I also translate the article to the Mandarin, to the Chinese language. So when this time all people, I didn't really have a kind of criticism, because the people started to thinking more. People understand that the determination and the defense well is truly critical for Taiwan defense. I believe that is since the Taiwanese people have learned. And secondly, the Ukraine's resistance is the kind of a surprise, not only by the Taiwan, I believe, but by the rest of the world. They can continue to compete with the world's number 2, the military. And probably because there's big reason, that's because the Ukraine continuously get the support from the Western world, even right now. But however, it is not the case for Taiwan, because Taiwan is an island state. Taiwan is very difficult to follow Ukraine mode to achieve the defense objectives in the cross-strait conflict. So that if any country that wants to support Taiwan, assist Taiwan, like the United States, well, after war is break out, and no time to continuously assist us. So pre-positioning is very critical. Also, I urge that the United States should consider the WRSA, that is War Reserve Stockpile for Alliance. We should start with have a good storage for this kind of weapons, equipment, the spare parts, food, energy, and so on. In a good preparation, so that Taiwan can use it to defend ourselves. We cannot rely on the external support after war. And finally, our people began to realize as a weaker side, much weaker side compared to our enemy, compared to China's strength, build up credible of self-defense capability is the only way Taiwan should do. How should we achieve that? That is overall defense concept. Establish the credible asymmetrical warfare capability, because we cannot have enough money, to use this kind of the aircraft versus aircraft, warship versus warship, and tank versus tank. From the Ukraine war, you see the symbolic ground battle is a kind of javelin or stinger. The symbolic the sea battle is a kind of Neptune. This sank the Moskova. This kind of a warship, and symbolic the system is not the fighter jet. It's a kind of air defense system. That is why Ukraine can sustain it so long. So we cannot stick on the conventional platform anymore. We should put our resources focus on the asymmetrical capabilities. That is the overall defense concept. Continues the stress on that. I believe in principle we appreciate the lesson learned from the Ukraine war. Now we all consensus become strengthened, and I believe we will have same opinion in the future compared to the past, to establish mainly on the asymmetrical capability and makes the best balance between the conventional platform and asymmetrical capabilities.
You already mentioned the United States, but what do you expect from countries like Australia or Japan in terms of support if a conflict breaks out?
Yeah. For regional country, it's very important. Suppose the Taiwan has been occupied by the China. From the geographic the point of view, Taiwan is on the center of the first island chain, and 40% of the world's cargo ship will pass through the Taiwan Strait and the eastern water of Taiwan. So if Taiwan occupied by China, China will be able to complete control the north entry point of South China Sea. That means China will be able to control the whole region on that kind of choke points, and the whole Indo-Pacific region will undergo the structural change in terms of not only the military, but also the politics, economy, and the security. I believe that is why Japan considered that Taiwan's emergency is the Japan's emergencies. But however, from my point of view, Japan is kind of a very conservative country because of their constitution. However, now the United States encouraged him to be a very responsible stakeholder in the region, but also the Australia you mentioned about. If we can really cooperate together, we can establish kind of a collective elaboration in this region, including the United States, Japan, Australia, even other countries. Now we can form a kind of a very good deterrence to China, prevent them from launch that kind of a full-scale invasion. So alliance, also this is not alliance, but however the regional partner play a so important role. Besides the United States, I believe most important roles will be the Japan, because Japan's geographic situations can really control a big part of the Taiwan facing the East China Sea. But if once the Japan can really change their mindset and attitude, I believe they can establish very good deterrence effect. This is my opinion.
So, following your argument, in your opinion, the security of Taiwan is related to the stability of the Indo-Pacific as a whole?
Yeah. So Taiwan is kind of a really essential. However, probably you will say the West Pacific region is quite very close to the Taiwan. How about India Ocean is far away. However, if we see that from a strategic point of view, then even the Indian Ocean is kind of very essential to the West Pacific region. For instance, if the China launch this kind of blockade operations, and the Taiwan is not able to use its own capability, to safeguard sea line of communication or conducting this kind of escorts the operations. However, for this kind of blockade operation, if we see the Indo-Pacific as a whole region, then it will be very easy to solve it. Any country like the United States, if they can really station in the force as the entry points of or out points of the Malacca Straits, connecting from India to the South China Sea, if they also blockade all cargo ships heading to China, then they will create kind of a deterrence. Then the China will not launch this kind of blockade operation to Taiwan, because blockade operation to Taiwan also seriously affects the whole transportation to even Japan and South Korea or North Korea. So we should regard the threat as kind of the whole region threat, and not only focus on the Taiwan Strait.
And finally, Admiral, in a recent article in The Economist, you say that, quote, Xi Jinping may attack Taiwan to secure his legacy, end of the quotes. Why do you think that, and when this attack could take place?
Okay, but if you remember that in 2012, when Xi Jinping just stepped up, he showed that kind of China dreams. So in principle, in short, China dream will be the happiness people and the wealthy country. But most important is the great Chinese nation rejuvenation. But let's say if without the unification of Taiwan, how can they say that they already accomplished the great Chinese nation rejuvenation? So that is the unification of Taiwan is the Xi Jinping the goal he must do, and Xi Jinping is a kind of a different leadership from the previous one, like even including Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, or Hu Jintao. He's so ambitious, and he wants to break their own rule for the 10 years as a general secretary of the CCP, or chairman of the military council, something like they want continuously stay power. That means that when he can steadily stay with power, then the next step he wants to achieve the China dream. If he really wants to China dream, wants to bring the China to the top of the world, become the superpower of the world, he must unify Taiwan, because that is the most important puzzle piece for the China dreams. So For his third term, I believe also as the 2027, according to the former commander of Indo-Pacific Field Davidson, Admiral Field Davidson said that 2027 is the year they got full capability to invade Taiwan, to occupy Taiwan. So at that is time is the Xi Jinping's the third term, end of his third term. Now it's 2022, right? After 5 years, will be 2027. So at that time, he either wants to continue to stay in power for the fourth term, but he was started if the last at that time China has already have a kind of dominant power, even can compete with the United States. I believe he will choose to annex Taiwan as his kind of historical legacy. He's so ambitious. So actually, 2049 will be the centenary of the China. But however, all evidence we see that Xi Jinping is so ambitious. He wants to achieve that China dream as early as possible. I believe the 2027 is the beginning line. We should be well prepared before that time.
But what we could expect for the following weeks? Do you think the situation is going to be stabilized, or we could expect some worsening?
The following week, I don't think there will be a kind of a serious sense will be happening. However, now their coercion to pressurize on Taiwan is the more gets close and close. We do not know how close they are, because normally, for this kind of information, we cannot, they will not disclose too much. But however, in the long term, I don't think it would be a kind of a problem in the following weeks, but in the long terms, it depends on the engagement between the first line, the ships or aircraft. If you have a misjudgments, you have a kind of accidental conflicts, so nobody knows when the conflicts or war will begin.
Well, Admiral, thanks a lot for this great opportunity to talk with you about the current situation in Taiwan. Everyone is following this situation very close. Chile is very connected with Asia in terms of trade. So it's very important for us, the stability of in the Pacific region. So we are going to be waiting for your book in September. So thanks a lot again on behalf of the Athena Lab. We'll be in contact, Admiral. So
yeah, okay. I was thank again for the Athena Lab for inviting me speaking here, and I really appreciate the Chile is, although we are all the Pacific country, but however it's quite a long distance. I really appreciate the Chile's people like you. They pay such a kind of attention on Taiwan's security. I would say thank you very much for all of the people. Thank you, especially for the Athena Lab for inviting me to speak a little bit about the situation in Taiwan. Thank you very much.
No, thanks, Admiral, and thanks to our audience for following us. Please follow Athena Lab on social media and on our webpage. This webinar is going to is recorded, so it's going to be in English and also in Spanish with translation. So thanks and good night, Admiral.
Okay.
Goodbye. Adiós a todos y muchas gracias por acompañarnos.
Bye everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today, and invite you to participate in future Athena Lab activities.